I'm in Vangiller. It is currently 6:15 p.m. I am with John Wood in his home. Mr. Wood, where and when were you born?
I was born August 15th, 1925.
Where did you go to school?
Glens Falls, at Big Cross, which was over the west end of Glens Falls, and also the Glens Falls Junior and Senior High.
Where were you on December 7th, 1944? 41.
I have no idea.
When you found out about Pearl Harbor, how did you feel?
Oh, I guess everybody had mixed emotions about it. We knew that there was an awful lot of damage to our fleet, and knew that it was going to take a lot of redoing to rebuild our Pacific fleet. But at the time I was young enough so that didn't make a great impact, I guess.
How did you get into the service?
Oh, with I don't know how you'd say it. Not willingly. They had to draft me. I had no thoughts of enlisting, but probably would have, realizing at the time the situation. It was no harder for one person than it was for another, but I've always said after that if they had to come after me, it would be with kicking and screaming.
What branch did you join?
I went into the Army.
What training did you receive?
Well, started out at Camp Upton in Long Island, and shipped right from there to Camp Shelby down in Mississippi near Hattiesburg to get my basic training. I was pulled out about in May from Camp Shelby to go as a replacement. Probably was after D-Day, but I don't really remember whether it was just before or just after, because I don't remember what time of May it was I was shipped out. Probably was after those to go as a replacement, but sent me up to Fort Meade, Maryland, and decided I was too young to ship overseas, so they pulled me back for a couple of months until I turned 18, and I was attached and assigned to 39th Division at Camp Butler, North Carolina, then shipped out to Camp Atterbury after I turned 18 to join the 106th, which was scheduled to go overseas in the fall. And so but I trained as anti-tank in the 65th, and I was actually a truck driver for our gun squad.
Where were you sent overseas?
I'm sorry?
Where were you sent overseas?
I was sent first over to England. We landed in Scotland, near Edinburgh, and I can't tell you the name of the actual town, but went over on the Aquitania, and then shipped down to Chipping Norton, which is 20 miles or so, I think, west of Oxford, and got a little bit more training there, and then went to Southampton, and I went across the channel, and we stayed aboard ship for about 4 or 5 days until they could get us unloaded, and on the land we had to go by little barges, and some went in amphibious vehicles, but then they set us up across France and into Belgium, and then right into Germany. Wound up on the Siegfried Line about 7 miles east of Bergrollen, Belgium, in a little town of Heckerscheid, Germany. And that's where we were, right on the Siegfried Line, when we moved in there our December 11th, and told it was going to be a nice, quiet place for the winter. We relieved the 2nd Division, and my company, if you've ever read the book Company Commander by Charles MacDonald, he was captain of my company, and I don't know which regiment he was in, but we replaced his company at Heckershide. And as I say, we were told to be a nice, quiet place for the winter, but by the night of the 15th, we could hear tanks running just up over the hill from us, and lots of them. And we were told, well, don't worry about that. It's probably just 1 or 2 tanks, and now that's maybe just amplifying noise to get us concerned about it, you know, and we're just had playing tapes or records or whatever, and so we knew what was going on, but didn't seem like we could get through to our officers that it was something really big coming. So of course, you know that the bulge broke out December 16th, and we had toward 4 divisions at about a 65-mile front, and we were hit by, I believe it was 27 divisions, and so we were badly outnumbered. But right in our particular sector, we were able to hold them off, and they just seemed like everything at us, but we turned them all away, what ones could get away. But we had a terrible slaughter out in front of us, and especially I've got pictures here that show the where I was, but we my company probably killed somewhere between 900 and 1,100 men, and then we took about 75 prisoners ourselves, and one of the officers from my company came up through, I can't even think of his name at the instant, but he came through with a counterattack and captured 90 German prisoners right behind us, so we were surrounded and weren't aware of it. He also got a group in a house at Heckershide, which had a neighborhood of 112 Germans in the house, plus 14 of our men that were prisoners. And with a platoon of men, Captain Berwick, his name is, was able to convince those 112 Germans to surrender because all they could see was dead bodies. They claimed you could walk across the field without stepping on the ground, and that was probably a big 200 yards across right at that sector. And but there was well over 200 men that he captured, as well as the 75 that we had, and it did an awful number on the 62nd Volksgrenadier Division that attacked us. And of course we were in a sector where we had our M company there. I think that was our heavy weapons company, and we also had the 28th Division just south of us, and right there in about I'd say a 4 or 5 mile front that the 62nd Division hit, and we only once I ever found anything ever mentioned of the division again, and that was later during the balls. They must have got a bunch of replacements in and got activated to some extent.
Was the bulge your first experience with combat?
I'm sorry?
Was the bulge your first experience with combat?
First and only, yes.
Oh.
We moved back on the 17th We got orders to move that back just at sundown. And I had been in a particular spot all afternoon, and I hadn't gone much over 100 yards. I looked back just in time to see a white phosphorus shell hit right where I'd been. Boy, that made the pit bats come out, I'll tell you. And that white phosphorus is horrible. But we moved back to Bergrollen, across the Our River. We moved back under cover of darkness and slept in a field that night. Couldn't leave. By then it was cold enough, the ground froze. And so anyhow, in the morning, as soon as it got light, we made our way across the Our River at Bergrollen and then deployed along a cliff that was looking over the Our River railroad track and a road that was between us and all that. But we stayed there for, I think that we moved from there on the 22nd. I'm not absolutely sure. I've tried to sort it out in my own mind, but pretty much had to be the 22nd, during which time we had just about nothing to eat. And I did go once for water down to a crossroad where there was a well, and took a bunch of canned beans with me and brought them back. But from the night of the 15th until that day that we moved out from Bergrollen and headed south and west, I had 1 K ration and 1 C ration. Well, while we were moving back, there was a Jeep went through with a trailer, and the trailer had some boxes in the back, and I got in one of those boxes that was moving along slow, and I got a handful of dried figs, and they tasted pretty good. Well, we got to a crossroad some miles south of there. We figured we'd probably walked somewhere around 14 miles, and we could hear a tank column coming behind us all the while. But stayed overnight at a farmhouse, and when we got there, a kitchen truck moved in and set up, and they were giving out some stewed fruit that I think was citron. I'd never had any before, but it appeared to be that's what it was. Some years afterwards, my wife's dad used to raise citron, and so it convinced me that's what I'd had. But I had a canteen cup of that. Didn't fill that empty spot entirely, but somewhere, I think the next morning, had to be the next morning, this farmer had some chickens, and I had my eye on a rooster. I said, that rooster can't lay eggs for him. So I chased that chicken around, or that rooster around the house, about 3 times around, and he kept getting over this board fence on me. So I found a long stick, and when he made for the fence, I whaled him, got him down, and we ripped the hide and feathers off of him, and got the innards out, and put a stick through him. Somebody threw some gasoline on the ground and had fire about 4 or 5 feet high. We stuck him in that fire and turned it about 3 times, and somebody hollered, "Fall in," and "Get out of here," says, "Every man for himself." So I grabbed for a chunk of the chicken, and I happened to get a hold of the breast, so I ripped the breast right out of it, and I was heading out of the area, chewing on that raw chicken, and boy, oh boy, did it taste good. But anyhow, I got into the back of a truck, and we moved back, and I have no idea where we went, only that it was west. And somewhere along the line, we joined up with an anti-aircraft outfit, and I got over into a half-track in the back of one of these half-tracks that was set up with machine guns and 20 millimeters and 37 caliber anti-tank guns. And during the night, we were traveling in convoy, and it was pitch dark. You couldn't see the vehicle in front of you or behind you. But we got stopped at a crossroad, and there was a house right close to the road, and we had orders not to return any fire. And even though somebody was shooting at us from behind a hedgerow or somewhere 400 or 500 yards away, and tracer bullets were going over our head. And somebody threw a hand grenade into the Jeep that was right behind me. And anyways, I was watching these machine gun bullets that was sweeping like a garden hose. You could see the curve of it with the tracers, and they were going back and forth over my head about, maybe 8 or 10 feet up. And all of a sudden it dropped, and I was looking like I read the line of them. And it was far enough away, and I was able to shift sideways enough that 4 or 5 of them went right by my head. And, I got down out of that bucket and got over behind that thing. I was up on top of baggage and all their equipment and everything. So I was kind of exposed. So I hung on the edge of the bucket and held my feet up off the track. That's the way I was till we get out of that crossroad. As soon as they got moving, I climbed back up in the bucket and got back behind the lines. And somewhere, I remember staying overnight in the field. It had to be the 23rd, and we about a dozen of us under a big tarp, and that's all we had to cover up with. And we had no warm boots or warm shoes. All we had was just long underwear with a pair of not heavy wool pants, but army wool pants, such as they were, and the field jacket, and wool knit hat with the steel helmet with a helmet liner, and it was pretty cool. And it was getting down 0 or below, and but sometime the next morning, the sky cleared and planes were going towards Germany, and just ever so many planes in the air, just squadron after squadron after squadron, all headed towards Germany, and the fighters going up and down through those squadrons of planes. And we watched. I saw one B-17 get a wing blown off it, and that just came down. I never saw anybody bail out. And but there was a fellow with a P-38 would get way up above the German fighters and then get right down on, come right down on them and force them into a dive. And he was just putting the lead right to him, and I just watched him take down 3 different planes there in a half hour's time. And so he was pretty good. But we moved back to an area where there was some big artillery. I think they were the 240 long rifles, they call them. And they were, I could tell what direction they were pointed, of course. It had to be the enemy was that direction, but I had no idea where I was. And I got a general. I have no idea who he was. Came through in a Jeep and wanted to know what outfit I was from. And I told him. He said, stay right in this area. He said, somebody will get you back to your company. Well, that was Christmas Day. I happened to get I was back far enough behind the lines, I got a first-rate Christmas dinner. And then that night, I slept in a barn right there and froze my feet. And next night they sent me to Liège in the hospital, and from there into England. Spent 4 months in the hospital in England, and then went back across the channel and got word that the war was over in Europe while we were on the channel. That broke us all up. But moved back into a camp that was one, I think there was Camp Lucky Strike and Camp Philip Morris and Chesterfield and all. I have no idea what one I was in. But fooling around a little bit, I got my back twisted and got it hurting. And I had injured it in training in Camp Shelby. And they kept telling me it was sore muscles, sore muscles, sore muscles. They gave me APC pills. Gave me a bottle of rubbing oil. Told me to get somebody to rub my back. It was just sore muscles. Well, after a while it kind of wore off. I couldn't do any push-ups or anything of that sort without feeling like somebody was hitting me between the shoulders with an axe. But it wore off in time, and then I went on, switched over to Camp Pattyberry in 106, went overseas and all that, and I got softened up while I was in the hospital is what it boiled down to. Got twisted again, and that's what I hurt my back the second time. And I had a real go-around with a doctor that I believed that I met him in Glens Falls afterwards, Dr. Bulliva. I didn't know what Dr. Bulliva looked like at the time, but I think it was him because I saw him a few years later. And anyhow, I never asked him about it, but we went round and round about my back problems, and he was sore. It was sore muscles and rubbing oil and APCs. So after threatening to go to the colonel, he sent me for x-rays and determined I had a broken back. So then they sent me back to the hospital for another 4 months. Wound up being sent home, and then wound up down in Halloran General Hospital down in Staten Island. After I got my cast off, I was able to come home, and we got married, and that's I got discharged when I got back from furlough, and that's pretty much my Army history.
Other than your back, were you ever wounded?
No, just the frozen feet was qualified me for a Purple Heart, but that never actually got injured in any way other than that.
You said you were in an anti-tank division?
Yeah.
What exactly did that entail?
Well, we had tow-behind 57mm anti-tank guns, which were like pork guns to shoot at German tanks that had 4 or 5 inches of armor on them. They'd blow a track off. They might possibly either dislodge a turret or jam it so that you couldn't be effective. But they were far from gun enough for a German tank. 75 was barely big enough, but finally we got changed over to 90mm guns in our tank destroyers and our own tanks, and they were a weapon that was formidable enough to handle German tanks. But if we had someone I read just recently said that if we had 90mm guns, that the Germans would have never got through our area at all, and we would have stopped them in their tracks as far as their tank items are concerned.
Where exactly were you stationed in Belgium?
I'm sorry?
In Belgium, where were you stationed?
A little village of Heckerscheid. That's Heckerscheid, Germany.
Mhm.
But as I say, we moved back to Bergroland, which is right on the Aar River. The Aar River is a dividing line between Belgium and Germany right in that area.
Because you were wounded, you didn't have any fear of being sent to the Pacific after the war ended?
No, no. No, matter of fact, my name came up for discharge, and there was two officers fighting over me, and one wanted to send me into the Pacific limited service, and the other began to cussing him out, and if we don't get these men discharged, he says, how are we ever going to get out of the Army ourselves? So I went with him. I was glad to go. But we went on our honeymoon, and while we were over in Canada, the war ended in Japan. We didn't know, everybody was speaking French. We had no idea what they were so happy about. People were running up and down the streets hollering and yelling, and we just thought they was crazy Frenchmen. We had borrowed my brother's car. We lived down in the southwestern part of the state, and over into Canada at Niagara Falls, and wound up heading back to his place. Because my car had been broken down, I couldn't get the park right off. And so anyhow, and when we came back headed back to his place, we stopped at a gas station. Of course, gas was rationed. And so I told the fellow at the station, I says, I've only got one 5-gallon sticker left. I don't know whether we're going to make it on to Hoytsville or not, but that's what I've got. He says, you don't need that, the war's over. Huh? So that's the first we knew about that. Of course, being on a honeymoon, we weren't watching any news or anything.
Are there any other stories you'd like to share?
Any what?
Any other stories you'd like to tell?
I still,
Are there any other stories that you'd like to share about your time in the war?
Well,
or after?
when I was wearing this body cast, it was a full body from my hips to my shoulders, and the chest of it was probably 1.25 inches thick. Nice hard chest on a skinny little guy. When I went in the service, I was 135 pounds soaking wet, and I didn't gain too much while I was in the service. Then when they put me into a body cast, my weight started dropping right off again. I couldn't eat because I couldn't breathe, so it was better to not eat too much. And so with a shirt and tie on, I'm a little skinny guy going around with my chest out, you know. We were in the hospital at Howard General, waiting to go out on pass. I could get a weekend pass, and I could hitchhike to Glens Falls faster than I could ride a train or a bus. So I'm visiting with two other fellows, and the third man, another man walked up, and I didn't know him. I presumed that he and the other fellows knew each other, but joined the conversation with us. Finally, after a couple of minutes, he looked at me and says, what are you sticking your chest out for? I said, it's just the way it is. He said, I have a good mind to punch it in. I said, help yourself, you can't hurt it. Boy, he hauled it off, hit me right there, the thickest part of that cast. And he turned around and walked away. I never saw him before or since. I don't know whether he broke his hand or not, but he very likely could have. All he did was knock me back a couple of steps. So I couldn't move inside the cast, so it didn't hurt me any.
Do you have any questions? Yes. Well, I realized that, but this is etiquette. No.
I didn't think of it.
Okay, I guess that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
The red one? Or?
Yeah.
The Germany up here, which consists of about, well now about maybe 7 or 8 houses. If you look back here, you can see the hills in Belgium. This is looking west, and there's a roadway runs along here, this ridge. I was trying to think. There's a name for that road that I can't remember, but it was, our first platoon was put up out in this area here, in these woods, and in the field, and this is where the bulk of the slaughter took place. I was in the 3rd platoon, and this runs right down into a deep draw. You can see it better in the picture in here, but we were on the far side of this draw, way down this corner. And the Germans had to come clear across these fields to get to us. Our 2nd platoon was in these woods here. These have changed a little bit. These woods are a little closer to the road than they were. There's a separation between them and another strip of woods. They're probably 200 feet this way or something from what they were at the time we were there. And the Germans just came swarming across these fields, and we had a really good chance to work them over because we were dug in and they weren't. And when
Tell them about your trip. Tell them about your trip.
I will. When we had log bunkers that we stayed in. I've got some just pictures of where they were more than anything. Well, here's where my platoon was, coming down this draw. These larger blocks are bunkers that we slept in, and we had foxholes on either side, and there was more foxholes than it shows here a little bit, but not too many. And but there was foxholes enough for 32 men or so. That's were in the platoon. But my squad was down in this area, and that's this first bunker. And we had a horrible artillery barrage come in about 5:30 in the morning, lasted till about 7. And then we went out to our foxholes. And as soon as we got in our foxholes, we hear this voice with a real German accent say, "Hello, boys," and everybody shot at him. You couldn't see him; it was pitch dark. But he ran right down this whole row of foxholes, and everybody was shooting at him. I don't know how far he made. I could hear his hard heels going over the rocks there for a ways. But anyhow, we had one man that slept right through the entire artillery barrage. And when it lifted, we were ready to go out to our foxholes. My platoon leader grabbed my rifle. I hollered, "Hey, Sarge, that's my rifle." He said, "I know what you're using mine." And he gave me a bolt-action sniper rifle. Didn't even show me how to load it. I didn't know how to load it. I had little clips with the shells in them. The clip wouldn't go in the gun. And I guess that you push the clips down, the bullets down out of the clip into the rifle, but I never found that out. I had to use a single shot. And but it didn't matter. I got to fire one shot in about 2.5 hours. I spent all my time loading magazines for a Browning automatic, and my buddy that was wielding that Browning, he was doing a fine job, and I wasn't about to interrupt him. So that's the way the first day's battle went, and I finally ran when fighting let up a little bit, I ran back to our bunker to get the bag of ammo for the Browning. And my buddy swears he's had them all the while. He says, there's no way you could keep up with me. I says, somebody did. I says, how many magazines did you have? He says, well, I had 20. I says, and they lasted almost a minute apiece. Yeah? I says, who the heck kept up with you the rest of the time? Well, you couldn't keep up with me. Well, I says, you kept it firing all the while. Well, yeah, but he said, I had my 20 magazines, so I've never been able to convince him anything different. But, anyhow, that's pretty much what happened. I've got a picture in here if you might want to take a picture of it. I'll give you, turn that so you can see it better. I don't know if you can make those out or not.
Okay.
Well, that was
Thank you very much.
Do you want one of you and him?
Will that be okay?
I'm sorry?
Could I have a picture?
I think we're, yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Excellent. Came out very well.
Might be funny to you, it was to me afterwards, in training with I was truck driver for the squad hauling this anti-tank gun and a squad of men in the back of the truck. Well, we had set up a field situation where we were to come over the brink of this hill, run down across a field, which is probably 25, 30 acres, into a strip of woods, get into the woods and set up our gun to cover the next truck that would come down in there. Meanwhile, these other guns are set up on the hill to cover us while we're getting set up. And we're going down across this field. This was a 6x6 Dodge in grass about so tall, and I was just parting the grass as I went through it with that truck. And I had it in about third gear, low range, I think. I was coming down across that field almost wide open with that thing, and right in front of me is a ditch about 3 to 4 feet deep. I hit the end of that ditch. The front of that truck bounded right up like that. And I've got a squad leader standing up, hanging out of the windshield. Well, that thing goes in the air, he hollers, "Get my helmet!" That thing come down, and those poor guys in the back of that truck got thrown around something terrible.
I bet they did.
They had nothing to hang on to. But we got into the woods and got our guns set up. But, oh, man alive, that thing hit and broke into that ditch. It probably was as wide as the smear to that china closet, and just went into it and just bounded like that. Wow.
That's been a heck of a ride.
With a gun on behind, no less.
It's a wonder you didn't lose the gun when you hit that ditch.
Well, it had this piddle hook with a ring. So as long as that didn't break, it had to come with me.
They didn't try to take your license away from you?
No.
Not much you can do when you're in those kind of circumstances.
No,
You just gotta go.
The squad leader standing up, he didn't see it either, or he'd have hollered. But he should have been able to see it better than me.
Yeah, I think so.
His
He's
head was
bird's eye
higher.
view. Yeah.
But never forget him, Ray Mitchell from down in Georgia. Give her a hell of one! Well, thank you for coming over.
Thank you very much.
Listening to a whole lot of blabber.
I enjoyed it.
I don't know how I remember